Right, let's get more on that big game for Villa now and a few other things and speak to Alan Smith. Alan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Matt. All good?
Yeah, nice one, mate. We're going to get on to Arsenal, of course, in a bit, but let's start with Aston Villa then. And, how do they go about turning this around against a side that is banging form and so exciting right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an uphill task, let's face it. That third goal in Paris makes things that bit harder. But I don't think they want to go at it bullet a gate. There's 90 minutes to do it, possibly 120. They've got to win, by 2 goals to take them into extra time. And you know that Unai Emery's team, Matt, will be very disciplined in terms of the tactics. They don't have to go chasing it straight away. They've got to do, the basics right and try and build up a rhythm. And with those Villa fans behind them, they can make a go of it. I know he's whipping up the fans to try and spur them on. And we saw what the Arsenal fans did for the Gunners against Real Madrid in Real Madrid in that first leg. So, yeah, they've got to do everything right, Matt. I would say that. But Morgan Rogers makes a good point. You've played them in the first leg, and so that kind of mystique goes out of it. You've had your battles individually against your man, and sometimes you've done well, sometimes not. But you know their strengths and weaknesses more than they did going into that first leg. So hopefully that's going to help Aston Villa. It'd be wonderful if they could get through. It would be one of the all-time great nights at Villa Park, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Emery's got a big decision up front, hasn't he, as to who to start. Rashford started the last couple of games. There was some criticism of him in the first leg. Do you think when he starts up front, he works hard enough?
Yeah, I think there's been a difference between when he starts and when he comes on as a sub, which quite often there is. Substitutes come on and they run about a lot and they make a difference sometimes. So, yeah, that's a key decision, I think, for Unai Emery. And he sees Rashford as a number 9, so he is a direct threat or an option to Ollie Watkins. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, Watkins has been nursing this knee injury. That's held him back, I think, but he scored a wonderful goal at Southampton at the weekend, looked really sharp when he came on for half an hour. So the decision-making might be determined by the state of Watkins. Is that knee okay to play 90 minutes? But, yeah, Watkins he gives you so much more in terms of his movement, closing down. I think he'll work harder off the ball. He'll be a bit more energetic. He can kind of lead the press from the front, probably better than Rashford. So that's another thing to consider for Unai Emery.
So if he's fully fit and you're Unai Emery, are you going with Watkins?
If he's fully fit, yeah, I think I probably would, yeah, because, you saw with that goal, he's looking really sharp in front of goal at the moment, and he's been at Villa a long time, and I think he deserves to play in a game of this magnitude.
How about PSG then? Obviously, they beat Liverpool. They were sensational against Liverpool in both legs, really. But they were the underdogs going into that tie. In this game, they are the favourites. They're expected to go through. Might that make things a bit different for them psychologically?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of experience there. And obviously, Luis Enrique is one of the most experienced managers around. They are a proper team now, aren't they? As opposed to the Galactico era. And they've got so much ability going forward. So how they handle it, yeah, it'll be an interesting one. If Villa can really take the game to them early on and put them under pressure and score an early goal, then how do they react to that? So it is going to be a fascinating tie. And to see how PSG go about it, I mean, you look at them and you think, yeah, their strength is going forward. So you wouldn't expect them to sit back and defend the penalty area. You'd expect them to try and get a fourth goal.
Yeah, big game, of course, at Villa Park then tonight. There's a big game coming up as well in Madrid tomorrow. We'll see Arsenal training ahead of that game against Real Madrid a bit later. They're 3-0 up from the first leg. They've also got a decision, though, haven't they, Alan? How to approach this game. Do you think it would be folly for Arsenal to go out there and just sit back and think they can soak up pressure for 90 minutes?
Yeah, no, of course it would. You don't want to be doing that and sinking back further and further towards your own goal. But Arsenal's strength at the moment is defensively. Obviously, we've spoken so much about the lack of a centre forward, and they can't keep relying on set pieces to score goals. If it's not corners, it's free kicks and Declan Rice. Yeah, it's a tightrope. They've got to be positive. I think as a player, if you're sent out with a defensive frame of mind, then I think psychologically it's not great for the individuals and it won't be great for the team. So Arteta, it's an important team talk before this match to kind of lay down the exact approach that they want to make. But they've got to be positive. They've got to take the game to Real Madrid. And if they can get the fourth goal, obviously, then you would think that that is done and dusted. At the moment, it's not, because as we've seen so many times, Real Madrid get a goal and they can achieve what seems the impossible. But fantastic performance at the Emirates. You know, they'll be buoyed by that. And defensively, if they do things right, you know, Saliba alongside Kivior, you would imagine Kivior's done better in the last few games than previously. But yeah, defensively, they've got to be spot on. The Real Madrid attack was disappointing, wasn't it? When Arsenal went a goal up, 2-up, there was nothing really coming back at Arsenal when you would have expected them to turn up the heat and make it really difficult, create chances. And they didn't do that. Will that happen for 2 successive games? I'm not so sure.
Well, being an Arsenal fan, I know a few pessimistic ones knocking around who are actually quite nervous going into this game. I'm not one of those, to be honest with you. What's your view on this, Alan? Arsenal have got such a strong defence. Can you see them conceding 3, even against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu?
Yeah, of course, Matt. You could see that. Because when that, you know, white tide swarms forward with the fans behind them, you know, any team might find it difficult to keep them out. So you can understand why Arsenal fans are a little bit wary, because everyone's saying, oh, 3-0, you know, the boys are through. And it's certainly, that's not the case. And I'm sure Arteta's not thinking like that. And he'll be putting it into the minds of his players that that's not the case. It's still very much game on. But if they do things right, if they set out the stall early on, and they're good at keeping possession, Arsenal, and if they can keep hold of the ball, that's a fantastic asset for them to have to try and take the sting out of any fight back from Real Madrid. And they've got plenty of players that can do that. So hopefully, yeah, they can have a good share of that football in the first half to settle them down as much as anything else.
Now, at the risk of getting too far ahead of ourselves, of course, but Arsenal, Aston Villa, PSG are all in the same half of the draw. If Arsenal do go through, who do you think they'd rather play in the semis, Villa or PSG?
Yeah, it's an awkward one, that, because I always feel as a player, you don't really want to play against one of your domestic rivals, and you'd rather play against a team from Europe. You know, you can argue PSG might be stronger than Villa, but I would say PSG personally, if I was Arsenal, if they get through. But you know, first things first, get through to that semi-final and have a look at who you're playing then.
Hello, welcome back to the Football Show. As you can see, Alan Smith is still with me. We're going to talk about the race for the Champions League spots right now and Europe in general. Alan, let's start with last night and the Monday Night Football. Bournemouth back on track. They've reignited their own hopes of European qualification with that 1-0 win over Fulham. They jump above Fulham in the table. I know they've been on a bad run, but overall, how impressed have you been with Iraola's side?
Yeah, massively, Matt, really have. I've been down there quite a few times for Sky, and they always give you a game. They play with such energy, such intensity, take the game. I mean, they break forward so quickly. And this was a tough game against a Fulham team that have had a really successful campaign. So that early Semenyo goal just set them up really well. I mean, he's been one of the stars, but there's been plenty of them. You know, Christie, Cook, Evan Nielsen's come into a foreign league, and you wonder whether he's going to be able to settle, score goals, and he has done. They've had injuries, they've had key injuries, but they've been able to navigate them. So Andoni Iraola, I mean, he's a fine manager, and there'll be plenty of clubs looking at Bournemouth with green eyes, hoping maybe they can prize him away. So Bournemouth will be desperately trying to keep him. But what he's built there has been so impressive.
Yeah, and good point you make there as well about the injuries, because a lot of people forget that a club like Bournemouth, you wouldn't normally be able to deal with those kind of injuries, but they've had some really bad ones this season. They're going to be, you'd expect, in the race for the Europa League, Europa Conference League. If we look at the Champions League race, Newcastle now, with that win over Manchester United on Sunday, look like they're in the pound seats. If they beat Crystal Palace, they'll be up to third. Is that the way you see it? Do you see them now as hot favourites to finish in the top five?
Yeah, well, I think they're favourites. They've got that momentum behind them. You know, they've got the bit between the teeth. I mean, the great thing is that they've won the Carabao Cup, but everybody then has not relaxed, saying, yeah, we've done our job, because I wouldn't say it's a bigger carrot to get into the Champions League, but it's a huge one, and any top player wants to be playing at that level. And that second half against Manchester United, when they absolutely blew the visitors away, was really impressive. I spoke about Bournemouth playing with that energy. I mean, Newcastle they can be such a physical side; they can overpower you, and it was just too much for Manchester United. And they're flying at the moment, and I can't see them not flying at the moment, qualifying for the Champions League about that, because the previous campaign, where they had some really tough games, they were in a tough group, and are unlucky to go out. They deserve another crack at it. And of course, you know, with the owners, the money behind the club, this is where they want to be doing their business. So they're finishing strongly, which is what you need to do. So good luck to them.
Yeah, you touched on it there, and a lot of people used to laugh at Arsene Wenger, didn't they, when he said top four is as good as a trophy. What do you think is more important for Newcastle in terms of moving forward this year? Is it winning that Carabao Cup, or is it getting into the Champions League?
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate that Carabao Cup, because, you know, obviously 75 years, whatever it was, it's huge. So people won't talk about that as much now. So you can't dismiss that. And nobody's trying to. And you know, if they don't qualify for the Champions League, you know, they'll be in a position probably to have a go and do it next year. But yeah, it's kind of, you know, dining at the top table, as we say. The money, the revenue that you're bringing in, the quality of player, obviously, that you can recruit, and keeping your top players as well. You know, the likes of Alexander Isak and Guimaraes, the captain, they want to be playing in the Champions League. So they'll be feeling a lot more settled about next season if they are in that competition.
What about Chelsea then? Because they seem to be stuttering slightly at the key moment here. How damaging would it be, given the start that they had, if they don't finish, not even in the top four, but in the top five?
Yeah, it would be a big, big blow. Obviously, they've spent huge amounts of money in a short space of time, and you're expecting to see some returns for that. And Maresca, who knows, his job might come under scrutiny if they don't qualify. But as opposed to Newcastle, who are finishing strongly, Chelsea are kind of limping towards the line. They're still a very young side, of course. We say that all the time, and with that comes inconsistency. So they need to get things together now. And I've been there quite a few times to commentate when the fans are getting on the players' backs, when they're passing it around at the back and the fans want to get the ball forward quicker. And I know they had some stick against Ipswich, didn't they? So there's that little bit of a disconnect between the fans and the style of play at the moment, which is never helpful if you're a player down on the pitch and you can hear those grumblings.
Yeah, well, listen, at least they're in the mix at the moment. Obviously, Man United and Spurs are not in the mix for Champions League places, but they've got two massive games in the Europa League coming up this Thursday. Let's start with United. They've got Lyon. Ruben Amorim has been backed publicly, hasn't he, by the ownership. But how big a game is this for him? You know, if Manchester United can't get through it, that's their season done.
Yes, it is. I mean, who knows what the owners would think about that? I mean, Amorim, he needs a couple of transfer windows, doesn't he? So I don't think it would make sense to get rid. I think he needs to be given a chance. As unimpressive as it looks at the moment, we thought they were improving a little bit defensively, but that flew out the window, didn't it? With that second half performance at Newcastle, it was a complete car crash. But they can rescue their season with that European trophy, the same as Spurs could. So, yeah, huge game in front of an Old Trafford faithful, I think, that will be nervous beforehand as to what's going to happen. And the players always feel that kind of tension. But those players have got to handle it on the night in a way that they didn't handle that second half against Newcastle. It'll be a different sort of tussle, of course, but you know they've got to show a lot more against Lyon on Thursday.
What about Tottenham then? They've got to go to Frankfurt, 1-1 against Eintracht Frankfurt. It's 17 league defeats this season for Tottenham Hotspur, which is extraordinary. How decisive is this game for the future of Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, it feels like make or break. And even if they make it, you wonder at the end of the season when that campaign's evaluated whether those 17 or more defeats are going to count against him, because that's a horrendous record, isn't it, in the league? Horrendous. And to lose in the fashion they did to a Wolves team that's been struggling all campaign, it was horrible viewing for any Spurs fan and for Ange Postecoglou. So yeah, I mean, they need a win in Europe, I think, even more than Manchester United do to rescue their season. For Postecoglou, maybe to save his job, but kind of the form they're in, going over to Frankfurt with those fans behind the German team, who are riding pretty high in the Bundesliga. That's going to be quite a task for them, and I'm not entirely confident that they've got it in them to handle it.
Yeah, it looks like they've got the tougher job than Man United anyway, on the face of it. Let's finish with your former side, Leicester. Difficult time of it of late, but they scored, Alan. They gave the fans something to celebrate. Couple of goals in the game, but overall, where's it gone wrong last few matches?
Yeah, I mean, it's not in the last few matches, is it? It's been the season as a whole. They lost some key players. Steve Cooper came in, and then the fans, there was a disconnect between him and the fans with his Nottingham Forest connection. In hindsight, I think it was a poor decision to let him go. I think they should have held on to him. Ruud van Nistelrooy appointment, I think, was the wrong one. Again, it's in hindsight, but he's not used to scrapping at the bottom of a table. He's got no experience of that. It just went from bad to worse, and I think confidence within the team has obviously plummeted. And they just didn't know where the next goal was coming from. I don't think he did. Nice to see him get a couple, but they're going to have to build again in the Championship. Leicester have always been a yo-yo team, but having won the title in 2016, then win the FA Cup, you're hoping that they can then become established in the Premier League in the way that Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth have done. It's a sad sight to see them dip back down again.
Yeah, they're going to have to come again, aren't they? Alan, enjoy the game on Wednesday. You're not making it out to Madrid, though?
No, I'm not. I'll be on my sofa, hopefully not behind the sofa watching. And hopefully we'll be celebrating at the end of it.
Amen to that. All right, great to talk to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.